I want to talk about a subject that has been discussed and ruminated on for centuries by some of the greatest sages that have walked this earth. What I'm going to talk about today is how the law of belief determines your life for better or for worse. I can give you a list of sages that have made commentary on the power of belief over the centuries, but let's just get basic and let me take a quote from the Holy Bible. Proverbs 23:7. It says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." Now, let me give you my interpretation of what it means when this quote says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." We can think about many things superficially with not that much emotion or not that much seriousness. Although, be it the case that even if we say something casually, consistently, and over time, this too will have an effect. But the idea is that it is when we say something and then feel it to be true, as it says, thinking in your heart, feeling it to be so. For feeling is believing. Let me repeat that. Feeling is believing. So if you want to know if you really believe something, you really feel it. So this is what is meant when it says in the Bible, according to Charles Prosper, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." In other words, as a man thinketh in his heart with feeling and believing, so is he. Let me say that belief determines all facets of your life, for better or for worse. For example, in the realm of success, your belief determines what you will attempt. That is, if you believe that you cannot be a success, little will you attempt. Your belief, or as sometimes we call your self image of yourself, determines what you will attempt and how long you will persist. Because your belief that something is worthwhile and your belief that something can be achieved will be the fuel for you to continue and for you to persist. However, to the contrary, if you feel that something is unachievable, or if something is out of your capability of doing, even though it may be within your capability, if you believe that it is outside of your capability, you will not be able to do it. You will be limited by your own belief system. How you believe about yourself determines how quickly you give up. If you believe that something is not worthwhile achieving or is unachievable, you will give up much quicker than the person who believes that something is worthwhile and is achievable. Your belief, your self concept, your self image will determine whether you save or whether you spend money, whether you are always in debt or whether you always are prospering. Because your concept and your belief about money will determine your experience of money in your life. There is an example that I love to give and that I have given in previous videos. I am retired, as many of you already know, and I am living very happily here in Colombia in South America. I am very fluent in Spanish, and I walk the streets sometime in my neighborhood, And I see many of the vendors on the street side selling their fruit, vegetables, electronics, and so on. And there is never a day, if I walk long enough, that someone in need will come up to me and ask me, "Oh, sir, can you please help me out with any little coin or peso? I'd really appreciate it." Now, let me tell you what it is that I normally do in a case like this. In a case like this, what I normally do is I reach into my pocket and grab out a fistful of coins in Colombian denomination of pesos. I take out a fistful of coins of different denominations. I open my hand up with my hand full of coins, extending it out to the person who just asked me. And I say to the person, "Here, take all that you want. All that you see is yours." And what do you think usually happens? The person who believes that they don't deserve much in life will usually respond with shock and will step back, become nervous, and say, "Oh no, I can't take your money like that. I just can't rob you." And I say, "No, you're not robbing me. I'm offering everything that you see here in my hand. And my hand is full of coins." And he says, I just don't know." And I said, "Well, if you do not select and take what it is that you would like to have, I'll close my hand up, put all these coins back in my pocket, and I'll walk away and you get nothing." Usually at this point, the person gets up enough courage to nervously extend his shaking hand out. And you know what the person normally will do? Even though I have a handful of coins piled really high, they'll usually take one or two coins, and that's it. And I usually say to them, I said, "Wow, if I were you, I would have taken it all." He says, "No, no, thank you. I really appreciate this." And I usually ask the question, why is it that the person never takes everything that they see? Because they have a belief, a self belief, that they do not deserve more. And their limiting belief will not allow them to prosper, even though prosperity is offered freely to the person. Let's take the subject of belief in health. If you believe that certain ailments will always be yours, you will always suffer these ailments. I had recently a girlfriend who was obsessed over illnesses that she imagined herself to have and conditions of ailments that she set up for herself that would consistently happen, and this would be for her the proof that what she says is true. For example, she would make a statement such as, "Oh, every time I, I get in the back seat of a taxi, I get dizzy and I want to throw up." Okay, so over time, she has consistently told herself this, and she continues to tell herself this. So what do you think happens when she gets in the back of a taxi? She usually gets nausea and wants to throw up. She will say, "Every time it gets a little cold in the temperature of the weather, I get a terrible cold. I get a fever and I start sneezing. Whenever the temperature drops just a little and there's a little moisture in the air, I would just get sick. The next day I'll wake up with a sore throat and I'll be sick and I won't be able to do anything." There was a time that I tried to convince her that she was self-programming herself for these ailments that she would identify with. She would say things such as, "My rheumatism, my arthritis." And she would identify with these ailments in a certain way that you would think that she was proud to talk about them. As a result, she was able to maintain all of these ailments and the conditions that would create these ailments every time she affirmed certain things. such as every time I eat this particular food, my arthritis begins to bother me. So she was one ailment after the other, all of which were self programmed by her belief, all of which she maintained by reaffirming the belief and sustaining the reality that she created for herself based on her own belief. Your belief will determine your success in relationships, whether you trust anyone. If you have a belief that no one can be trusted, you will be attracted to those people who can't be trusted in order for you to validate and to quote unquote prove your belief is correct. When you feel unworthy to have someone beautiful and special, you will rarely find yourself having someone beautiful and special because of the belief that you're holding for yourself. Now, I have talked about how belief determines how you experience your life for better or for worse, but now the question can become, a very good question can become, well, Charles, how do I change a negative self-belief? Now, this is the million-dollar question. And after more than 50 years of studying psychology, getting a master's in psychology, and reading the various and studying the various theories of how to change belief, I have come across what I believe is absolutely positively one of the best ways to change a self-belief in a relatively short period of time. It is using the power of rational thinking. Now, there is a whole system of rational thinking that was created by the psychologist Albert Ellis, who, by the way, was the person who inspired me to become a psychologist. And his particular system is called rational emotive psychotherapy, which is a type of therapy where a person questions the, the logic of a certain illogical belief and forces the person to challenge this negative belief rationally, to the point where if a person does this consistently on a daily basis, let's say in the morning for 15 minutes every morning at a certain time for 30 consecutive days, the person will see a change in this negative belief based on that person using rational confrontive therapy. Now, back in 1969, I read a book. It's classic. It's called Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. And to me, the very best chapter that I have ever read on the subject of using rational thinking to change a belief is chapter 5, which he titled How to Utilize the Power of Rational Thinking. And because this chapter is so powerful, I'm going to read the highlights of this chapter for you right now. Chapter 5, How to Utilize the Power of Rational Thinking, written by Maxwell Maltz in the book Psycho-Cybernetics. Many of my patients are plainly disappointed when I prescribe something as simple as using their God-given power of reason as a method of changing negative beliefs and behavior. To some, it seems incredibly naive and unscientific, yet it does have one advantage: it works. And as we shall see later, it is based on sound scientific findings. There is a widely accepted fallacy that rational, logical, conscious thinking has no power over unconscious processes or mechanisms, and that to change negative beliefs, feelings, or behaviors, it is necessary to dig down and dredge up material from the quote unquote unconscious. Your automatic mechanism, or what Freudians call the unconscious, is absolutely impersonal. It operates as a machine and has no will of its own. It is always trying to react appropriately to your current beliefs and interpretations concerning environments. It always seeks to give you appropriate feelings and to accomplish the goals that you consciously determine. It works on the data that you feed it in the form of ideas, beliefs, interpretations, opinions. It is conscious thinking that is the control knob of your unconscious machine. It was by conscious thought, though perhaps irrational and unrealistic, that the unconscious machine developed its negative and inappropriate reaction patterns. And it is by conscious, rational thought that the automatic reaction patterns can be changed. Bertrand Russell's method. In his book, The Conquest of Happiness, Bertrand Russell says, "I was not born happy. As a child, my favorite hymn was, 'Weary of earth and laden with my sin.' In adolescence, I hated life and was continually on the verge of suicide, from which, however, I was restrained by the desire to know more mathematics. Now, on the contrary, I enjoy life. I might almost say that with every year that passes, I enjoy it more. Very largely, it is due to a diminishing preoccupation with myself. Like others who had a Puritan education, I had the habit of meditating on my sins, follies, and shortcomings. I seemed to myself, no doubt justly, a miserable specimen. Gradually, I learned to be indifferent to myself and my deficiencies. I came to center my attention increasingly upon external objects, the state of the world, various branches of knowledge, individuals for whom I felt affection. In the same book, Russell describes his method for changing automatic reaction patterns based on false beliefs. He says, "It is quite possible to overcome infantile suggestions of the unconscious and even to change the contents of the unconscious by employing the right kind of technique. Whenever you begin to feel remorse for an act which your reason tells you is not wicked, examine the causes of your feeling of remorse and convince yourself in detail of their absurdity. Let your conscious beliefs be so vivid and emphatic that they make an impression upon your unconscious strong enough to cope with the impressions made by your nurse or your mother when you were an infant. Do not be content with an alternation between moments of rationality and moments of irrationality. Look into the irrationality closely with a determination not to respect it and not to let it dominate you. Whenever it thrusts foolish thoughts or feelings into your consciousness, pull them up by the roots, examine them, and reject them. Do not allow yourself to remain a vacillating creature, swayed by reason and by infantile folly. But if the rebellion is to be successful in bringing individual happiness and in enabling a man to live consistently by one standard, not to vacillate between the two, it is necessary that he should think and feel deeply about what his reason tells him. Most men, when they have thrown off superficially the superstitions of their childhood, think that there is no more to be done. They do not realize that these superstitions are still lurking underground. When a rational conviction has been arrived at, it is necessary to dwell upon it, to follow out its consequences, and to search out in oneself whatever beliefs inconsistent with this new conviction might otherwise survive. What I suggest is that a man should make up his mind with emphasis as to what he rationally believes and should never allow contrary, irrational beliefs to pass unchallenged or obtain a hold over him, however brief. This is a question of reasoning with himself in those moments in which he is tempted to become infantile. But the reasoning, if it is sufficiently emphatic, may be very brief. Now, as the author Maxwell Maltz continues to talk about how to eliminate negative thinking through rational thinking, in the section he entitles Examine and Reevaluate Your Beliefs, he says this: one of the reasons that the power of rational thinking goes unrecognized is that it is so seldom used. Trace down the belief about yourself, or the belief about the world, or other people, which is behind your negative behavior. Does something, quote, always happen, unquote, to cause you to miss out just when success seems within your grasp? Perhaps you secretly, quote unquote, feel unworthy of success or that you do not deserve it. Are you ill at ease around other people? Perhaps you believe you are inferior to them, or that other people per se are hostile and unfriendly. Do you become anxious and fearful for no good reason in a situation that is relatively safe? Perhaps you believe that the world you live in is a hostile, unfriendly, dangerous place, or that you, quote unquote, deserve punishment. Remember that both behavior and feeling spring from belief. To root out the belief that is responsible for your feeling and behavior, ask yourself why. Is there some task that you would like to do? Some channel in which you would like to express yourself, but you hang back feeling, I can't? Ask yourself why. Why do I believe I can't? Then ask yourself, is this belief based on an actual fact, or an assumption, or a false conclusion? Then ask yourself, is there any rational reason for such a belief? Or could it be that I am mistaken in this belief? Or would I come to the same conclusion about some other person in a similar situation? Or why should I continue to act and feel as if this were true if there is no good reason to believe it? Don't just pass these questions by casually. Wrestle with them. Think hard on them. Get emotional about them. Can you see that you have cheated yourself and sold yourself short, not because of a fact, but only because of some stupid belief? If so, try to arouse some indignation or even anger. Indignation and anger can sometimes act as liberators from false beliefs. Alfred Adler got mad at himself and at his teacher and was able to throw off a negative definition of himself. This experience is not uncommon. So, what I am saying is for you to try this particular approach of using rational, self interrogating questions, challenging the validity of a negative belief. If you do this consistently, if you do this vigorously, if you do this systematically, let's say every morning at 7 a.m. for 15 minutes, you attack a negative belief by questioning it until you begin to feel how irrational it is. I say to you, do this for 30 days without skipping a day. Having this routine of getting up every morning at 7 a.m., for example, and for 15 minutes, rationally challenging a specific negative belief that you need to get rid of until you feel the hold on you diminishing. That's my suggestion to you. So, I hope that now you understand how belief determines your life, for better or for worse, and also that you now have a technique and a system of rationally challenging and overthrowing a negative belief that has formerly taken hold of you. This is yours truly, Charles Prosper, your consistency success coach, wishing you as always to remain consistent and be successful.